to set out the next phase in tackling the coronavirus pandemic. Today, British Airlines called for clarity after being told that the government will bring in a 14-day quarantine for anyone arriving in the UK from any country apart from the Republic of Ireland. It comes as a further 346 deaths were announced across the UK today. That's in hospitals, care homes and in the community. It takes the official death toll to 31,587. Here's our political correspondent, Ben Wright.
The balmy bank holiday weather brought people to the parks. In London, police tried to remind them of the rules. While in Leeds, the measures on social distancing were also being stretched in the sun.
Just walking to the car to get the dog's bowl. People were just walking right close to you on the path, so you had to walk on the road, stay away from them. I think people are just kind of forgetting the seriousness of it all.
I think we're getting to a point where we're finding it a bit difficult being at home, but you can see why it's important to ensure that the lockdown continues for a little while longer.
Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will set out a roadmap for how England might leave the COVID lockdown. And today, one of Boris Johnson's cabinet ministers said the government would proceed with extreme caution.
Importantly, it is true to say that moving beyond COVID will be a gradual process, not a single leap to freedom. So when we do emerge, the world will seem quite different.
The aviation industry is one of many reeling from the impact of the current coronavirus restrictions. Airlines in the UK say they have been told the government will bring in a 14-day quarantine for anyone arriving from any country apart from the Republic of Ireland.
If this is the scientific advice, then absolutely we will accept that. Health and safety of our passengers is paramount, but this will have a significant impact on our sector. Nobody is going to want to travel if they have to go into quarantine for 14 days.
Secretary of State, can you confirm that anyone flying into UK airports will be told to quarantine for 14 days from the start of next month? A lot of people will wonder why this wasn't done weeks ago.
Now we have a situation where, as we get the R number, the reproduction number, down in the UK, and we begin to get things under control, we now have the capacity, as we just discussed in testing as well, it clearly then makes sense to look at what happens at the borders. I can't confirm is the answer. We'll have to wait for the Prime Minister tomorrow night.
The Prime Minister first announced the current lockdown less than 7 weeks ago.
You should not be meeting friends. If your friends ask you to meet, you should say no. You should not be meeting family members who do not live in your home. You should not be going shopping except for essentials like food and medicine.
Like everyone, Boris Johnson is weighing up risk, the need to protect the economy and people's liberty against the fear of a resurgent disease. Ben Wright, BBC News.
Transport Secretary Grant Shapps today also called on people to walk and cycle to work once the lockdown restrictions are eased in England, calling this a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform the way that people get around. Mr Shapps pledged £2 billion from a fund announced in February that could see new bike lanes in England within weeks. Our Chief Environment Correspondent Justin Rowlatt reports.
Travel as lockdown is lifted is a big challenge for the government. The social distancing rules mean buses and trains can carry far fewer passengers. If people take to their cars instead, the roads will be choked with traffic. That's why Transport Secretary Grant Shapps today announced £250 million for English local authorities to widen pavements and install pop-up bike lanes as quickly as possible.
So let me give you an idea of how our streets might look if these changes become permanent. I'm in Waltham Forest. They've invested a lot in this kind of thing. And have a look. Look at the way the pavement merges into the road. And the idea is it gives pedestrians and cyclists a sense of freedom to move around the space. You see new kinds of street furniture, I think it's called. So benches like this, you see the planter here with trees and a bike park there. And the idea is that we can all move much more freely through this space because there aren't as many cars and lorries coming through.
But what about motorists? They've got rights too, and many people will feel more secure from the virus in their vehicles. So what does Britain's biggest motoring association have to say about this?
Well, contrary to what people say, all our polls actually show that Drivers are going to drive less after lockdown, 36% are going to cycle more, walk more, run more. So we do need some radical measures to stop gridlock, because public transport won't be able to cope.
There will be a voucher scheme so people can have their bikes repaired, and in the longer term a National Cycling Commissioner will be appointed. Campaigners hope these changes will be locked in for good.
There's a bigger thing of reallocating space in the longer term and creating cities and towns and roads and streets around the country that really do make cycling and walking a safe, attractive and welcoming opportunity.
There have been huge improvements in air quality in Britain's towns and cities during lockdown. Mr. Shapps says he hopes we'll use the opportunity it has provided to find cleaner, greener and healthier ways to get around. Justin Rowlatt, BBC News, Waltham Forest.
Senior clerics are urging the government to act cautiously before allowing places of worship to reopen. All churches, mosques, synagogues and temples closed their doors almost 2 months ago, but some worshippers are now asking for their buildings to be reopened following the lead of Germany last weekend, as our religion editor Martin Bashir reports.
We need to physically be with Jesus more than we need our food.
And please open our churches.
So that, all told, we're testing literally hundreds of thousands of people every day. We've made fast progress on testing, but there is so much more to do now, and we can. When this began, we hadn't seen this disease before, and we didn't fully understand its effects. With every day, we're getting more and more data. We're shining the light of science on this invisible killer, and we will pick it up where it strikes, because our new system will be able in time to detect local flare-ups in your area, as well as giving us a national picture. And yet, when I look at where we are tonight, we have the R below 1, between 0.5 and 0.9, but potentially only just below 1. And though we have made progress in satisfying at least some of the conditions I have given, we have by no means fulfilled all of them. And so, no, this is not the time simply to end the lockdown this week. Instead, we're taking the first careful steps to modify our measures. And the first step is a change of emphasis that we hope that people will act on this week. We said that you should work from home if you can, and only go to work if you must. We now need to stress that anyone who can't work from home, for instance, those in construction or manufacturing, should be actively encouraged to go to work, and we want it to be safe for you to get to work. So you should avoid public transport if at all possible, because we must and will maintain social distancing, and capacity will therefore be limited. So, work from home if you can, but you should go to work if you can't work from home. And to ensure you are safe at work, we've been working to establish new guidance for employers to make workplaces COVID secure. And when you do go to work, if possible, do so by car, or even better, by walking or bicycle. But just as with workplaces, public transport operators will also be following COVID secure standards. And from this Wednesday, we want to encourage people to take more and even unlimited amounts of outdoor exercise. You can sit in the sun in your local park, you can drive to other destinations, you can even play sports, only with members of your own household. You must obey the rules on social distancing, and to enforce those rules, we will increase the fines for the small minority who break them. And so, every day, with ever-increasing data, we will be monitoring the R and the number of new infections and the progress we are making. And if we as a nation begin to fulfill the conditions I have set out, then in the next few weeks and months, we may be able to go further. In step 2, at the earliest by June the 1st, after half-term, we believe we may be in a position to begin the phased reopening of shops and to get primary pupils back into schools, in stages beginning with reception, Year 1 and Year 6. Our ambition is that secondary pupils facing exams next year will get at least some time with their teachers before the holidays, and will shortly be setting out detailed guidance on how to make it work in schools and shops and on transport. And step 3, at the earliest by July and subject to all these conditions and further scientific advice, if and only if the numbers support it, we will hope to reopen at least some of the hospitality industry and other public places, provided they're safe and enforce social distancing. Throughout this period of the next 2 months, we will be driven not by mere hope.
New slogan, because when the government told us to stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives, everyone knew what that meant. It was very effective messaging. It worked. I have to be honest, now that stay at home has been replaced with stay alert, in practical terms, I don't really know what that means. Can you explain?
Well, good morning, Sophie. And I think as we've now passed the peak of the virus, it's right that we update and broaden the message to the public. I think that's what the public want, and that they will be able to understand this message, which is that we should be staying at home as much as possible. But when we do go to work and go about our business, we need to remain vigilant. We need to stay alert, and that means things like respecting others, remaining 2 meters apart, washing your hands, following the social distancing guidelines, because the virus continues to be prevalent. Too many people are still dying of this, and we're going to have to live with it for a long time.
My point is slightly that stay alert is so vague, it's bordering on being meaningless. I mean, you could stay alert while staying at home, you could stay alert and go to work, you could stay alert while having 20 of your friends over for a party. Is there not a danger that this is so woolly that it could apply to anything?
Well, I hope not. The message that the public have adhered to very well for the last few weeks of staying at home now does need to be updated. We need to have a broader message because we want to slowly and cautiously restart the economy and the country. This will be a cautious approach.
So you want more people to go back to work?
At 7 o'clock this evening. Well, I won't preempt what the Prime Minister is going to say tonight. He's going to be setting out the roadmap for the weeks and months ahead, but it will be cautious. We're not going to take risks with the public. I understand people are anxious about the future, but we want now to have a message which encourages people to go to work as we begin to ease some of the lockdown measures, to take advantage of those, but always to be cautious and to be alert. And that means, as I've said, continuing to adhere to the social distancing guidelines. And staying at home will still be an important part of the message. But you will be able to go to work, and you will, in time, be able to do some other activities that you're not able to do today.
OK, I understand you probably don't want to preempt too much of what those other activities will be. We've all seen the pictures over the sunny bank holiday weekend of people stretching the rules of the lockdown, in some cases pretty clearly breaking the rules of the lockdown. Is this not really the time to ditch the stay-at-home message?
Well, as I've said, staying at home will still be a very important part of our message to the public. But people will also need to go to work. They'll need to go and do essentials like buying food and medicines and looking after vulnerable people where it's necessary. And when they do that, they need to be responsible. And by and large, the vast majority of the public are being responsible today. That's why the message that we've had for the last few weeks has been relatively successful. It was important that we had the parks open so that people could get out and exercise and could get some fresh air. We want to see that continue. We want to give more avenues for people to get out and about so that life can be more livable and more bearable as we learn to live with the virus and move into the next phase.
OK. Now, You're also introducing this new 5-tier alert system for COVID-19, a 1 to 5 scale. Can you just explain exactly what it is and how it would work?
Well, I think many people will be familiar with the threat level that we've had in this country for some time, which measures the ongoing threat of terrorist and other risks to our safety. And this is a similar threat level, which will be known, it will be very transparent. People will be able to see at what point we are in controlling the virus. At the moment, we believe the country is at 4 on a scale of 5, with 5 being the most concerning. And our aspiration is to bring that down as swiftly as we can to 3. And at each stage, at each of those milestones, we'll be in a position to open up and restart more aspects of the economy and of our lives. We're going to be rigorously monitoring our performance against that, and as I say, setting that out as transparently as we can. That will be done on a national scale, but the evidence behind that will also be able to inform what we do at a local level. And if we see that there are outbreaks in particular localities, neighbourhoods, schools, towns, then we may be able to take particular measures in those places as we build up a more sophisticated and longer-term response to controlling the virus.
Interesting to hear that there's going to be kind of a regional aspect to it too. I just got a quick question on the PM's roadmap that he's going to be setting out later. I know you're not going to want to go into details, but can you just give us an idea of the flavour of what he might say, but also, crucially, is this just going to apply to England, or will it also apply to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland?
Well, our strong preference is that the whole United Kingdom moves as one, and the Prime Minister has been working closely with the First Ministers, and you'll be speaking to some of them shortly. There'll be a COBRA meeting later today, which will include them, as always, and we hope that they will agree to a consistent approach across the country. That's our strong preference. But the Prime Minister's message, and I won't preempt exactly what he's going to say, you'll have to forgive me, but his message will be to thank the public for adhering to the social distancing guidelines over the last few weeks. We have now passed the peak. The virus is on a downward trend, but it's still very prevalent. Too many people are still dying of this, and so we have to adopt the cautious approach that he's going to be setting out. We will be looking to restart and reopen the economy and the things that we all miss in our daily lives, but we'll be doing that with great care and caution, and at every turn monitoring the impact that has on the rate of the infection within the community, and the steps that we take will be conditional on keeping the virus under control. If there are outbreaks